Hang on, piss off. There we go. Hey, hey, evening, folks. How are we? Hope you're all doing well. Yeah, apologies about the lack of a Friday waffle last night. Just I was going to do one, and things kind of got in the way, and I thought, hell, why don't I do one tonight? Because I've got a free, I've got a free opportunity. But a Friday waffle live would not be a Friday waffle live without this guy. Here he's there. How are you, mate?
Hey, I'm fine. And yourself?
Not bad. You can't complain this time. I gave you about 20 minutes notice this time.
Oh, yeah. That extra 5 minutes really sort of like did well, really, for me. Yeah, it was great. I only had to walk rather than run. Yeah.
So, by the way, since it's I don't normally drink when I'm doing these things, but it's a Saturday night, so I've got a delightful. I mean, if I'm out in the pub, I drink beer, but I'm in the house, I tend to drink cider.
Ooh, cider.
Order like premium Swedish cider. It's actually quite nice. Strawberry and lime.
Is it? I was going to say, is it one of them fruity ones where they put raspberry or something in it?
It's actually quite palatable. So, yeah, thanks very much for everyone that's tuned in tonight. So let's have a quick look and see who we've got in. We've got GTB Films, we've got Martroyd, Ian Batchelor, Colin Jones, the wonderful Livy Gregory. I hope your better half is tuning in tonight. I think it's mental that families watch this as well now. You get couples watching it. I'm turning. I was going to say turning into James Corden. Well, bloody the lackey exercise I've done. I look more like James Corden, but yeah, I'm turning into a Saturday chat show host. Oxmeister, LFC Games, and Robert Retro Gaming. Brilliant.
Oh God, Robert's in. Bloody hell, we got royalty.
So when I do these things, I was obviously when you go to do one of the live streams, you've got to give it a wee name, and I think I just call it a live stream, and I thought no, it's a Friday Waffle, and then you'll
Friday
get some
Waffle.
smart bastard will say you can't call it the Friday Waffle because it's on a Saturday, but if there was a TV program called I don't know Saturday Debate, which happened to go out a day later because Wimbledon's on or something, you wouldn't change the name of it, would you? It's going to be it's a Friday Waffle.
Yeah, the Tuesday gang, and they meet up on a Wednesday, and you go, "What the hell's that all about?"
So anyway, I know we've I think this is the first Happy New Year to you, mate. I think this is the first time we've kind of caught up live, so to speak. We're not going to go going on about Christmas and New Year. I mean, I think we pretty much know our feelings, but you're obviously back to work. You guys, you English folk go back a day early, I believe. You were back on was it the second? I think.
Yeah, it was the second for most people. I mean, for my particular team, we're a mix of full-time civil servant IT specialists and contractors, and the contractors have their own time scale. They don't have to work core hours, they don't have to work on a so they're depending on what their contract is, they can have 2 or 3 weeks off at Christmas. They just go, oh, it's a shutdown for me, I'd say I'm off. So yeah, there was the contractors tended to come back later actually for us.
Yeah, are you kind of glad to be back to work?
I am. And to be quite honest, everything about this year's already gone out the way, because most people now would turn around and say, oh, well, there's only a birthday to go, but I've had that. So now I'm just going through the year now with just
looking forward to next Christmas.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing though, you definitely notice. At least I notice it's definitely getting lighter at nights. When I mean, even just a month ago, 4:30, it was pitch dark. 4:30 now. I mean, I was out with the dogs about 10 to 4 tonight, and it was daylight. Great. I love the fact that we're getting lighter, and we're going to. Well, I think we're probably going to get shitter weather for about a month, because we always get the cold weather always seems to arrive about kind of February time. But it's going to get time to get out with the bikes and dogs and all that kind of shit.
I try not to look at the weather because I've been caught like that before. I don't know if you remember, they had the Beast from the East cold snap we had a couple of years ago, and all of this sort of stuff. And I've always tended to think, oh, we're heading into March, so it won't be long now. We'll have rain and everything. Cold snap comes along, throws you totally out, starts snowing, and you go, March? Well, what happened, and all this sort of stuff. So, but when it comes to the light, it's still depressing in the morning. But yeah, I have noticed it getting lighter in the afternoon. It's usually, what is it, about 4:30 now, is it? 4:45 when it's getting dark, and then 5.
Does it get? I'm trying to remember. Does it get lighter? Does it get darker earlier down south? I think it does, doesn't it?
Should do. Well, I mean, the world spins and we're at an angle, so I take it. It's works like that. So I'm not quite sure.
I'm just looking at Mr. Gregory's comment. Good evening, Alan, you old git, and Happy New Year, Dale boy. Cheers for that.
Yeah, cheers.
Thanks for that.
Thanks. When you were reading out that roll call, I thought, what, we back at school, is it? Mr. Ox, present. Or was it The Usual Suspect? The film The Usual Suspects.
They were actually talking. They were talking about that at work the other day. They were talking about The Usual Suspects, and have you seen it? I went, yeah. The problem is, I saw. See, this is the problem, and Colin Gregory can relate to that. When you're on your own, you live in your house with mum and dad, whatever. You can put whatever you want on. But the minute you settle down and co-inhabit with somebody, then you've got to consider what they want to watch, and you go, do you want to watch? No, I don't want to watch that. Do you want to watch this? No, that's too depressing. Do you want to watch it? No, I don't like horror films. Let's just put on something that's something that's light and happy. So with that in mind, from about 1990 to about 5 years ago, my movie watching just sort of went whap. It just kind of closed. For many years, I used to. My mate lived in his own flat, and a bit like yourself, he loved. He was right into his films. I mean, he loves all the classic, Hammer, House of Horrors, and all that kind of stuff. And anyway, he used to. In fact, this actually kind of leads on quite nicely. It's something I want to talk about shortly. He used to. He would buy VHS. Well, in fact, before, yeah, he used to tape all the films off the TV, and it used to annoy us because we'd say, right, do you want to go to the pub tomorrow night? And he'd be like, oh, I can't. Why not? Because I'm taping Star Wars. Well, why can't you tape Star Wars? Because I need to cut the adverts out. You're like, so you're going to forego a night to the pub, so yeah. And he would do that. And then when he obviously VHS tapes started becoming affordable, you could buy them. So he built up a huge collection. Then he moved on to DVDs, and he bought all the same films in DVDs. And anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent. So every Wednesday for a good number of years, we would all, the three or four of us, would pile round to my mate's house, and he would hire a video. And so that was pretty much how I got to kind of watch all the sort of the classic kind of 80s films. But the problem is, I've not seen these films for the best part of, 40 years, 35
Yeah.
years now. And I've got that, my memory sucks big style when it comes to films. You and I could watch a film last week and then start talking about it the week later, and I'll be like, do you remember that bit when the guy goes into the cafe and that guy comes out and I'll be like, nah.
No.
I genuinely don't. My brain just does not retain films. It's mental.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, let's see. I suppose the video recorder is the thing that turned everything around. The next thing was the portable telly that I got one Christmas that I was allowed to have in my bedroom. So those two things changed my movie watching and whether we watched things together as a family.
So
Because if there was,
at what point did you just have, like, obviously like most people, you had one TV in the house,
yeah,
which was usually be in the living room.
yeah, and it was rented as well. It had come from Multi Broadcast or from Granada or something. But then when portable TVs came around, I had a black and white 5-inch one that was built with a radio and a tape player that was like a ghetto blaster for a while. But then I was able to afford a 14-inch color TV from Woolworth. I remember that, and it was like, yeah, now I've got my own telly upstairs. I mean, the hardest thing was getting the aerial to work with it. You know what I mean? But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, all of a sudden I had my own. I can watch what I want. I don't have to be downstairs and watch what my mother's watching because she'd want to watch the soaps and I'll want to watch the other side. And so all that argument went out the way. But you're talking about very early 80s, about 82, 83. We had a video recorder, I think, in 81. The portable color television I'm talking about was 83, 84. So
Yeah, I can't remember. I mean, I still remember very, very vividly. I don't know what date it was or what year it was, but when we first got our, what would you call it, a VHS
yeah.
player. Again, like yourselves, we hired it. I can't remember where we got it from. British Relay or something, I think they were called. And the first program we actually tested it on was the Grand National. So there you go. I don't know if that's the same date every year, but I remember watching the Grand National. My dad recorded it, and we're watching it. And then we put it on again. We're quite literally all sat around the TV, staring at this thing. And he'd go, watch this. And then it would pause it. He was like, bloody hell. And then he would rewind it and it'd go, and obviously it was
Yeah.
like shit quality, but it's again, that had such an influence on myself and probably yourself as well. In the same way, the first time we saw a video game, because TV was just something that got put out. You just digested it. You watched it. You couldn't interact with it.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you could pause it you know, and watch a bit over again. It was absolutely insane. It really was.
Yeah, and I suppose when I look back, I know that instantly the family turned to me. Anything to do with that video recorder, my dad didn't know how to set the clock. The timer was it might as well come from NASA, you know. And trying to get my dad and my mother to understand it's got a separate tuner, so you just need to choose number 1 for BBC One, but you can be on any channel you want on the telly. You can watch that. It won't disturb this down here. Just choose the number that you want to record, and you press record and play. Oh, you baffled me. Go back a bit. What's that? You know, and all this sort of stuff, because you had to tune in like channel 6 or you know, to for the video channel.
So I'm trying to remember. I mean, up in Scotland, when did Channel 4? When did Channel 4 come out?
83, 84, I think.
Ah, right. So the video recorder preceded Channel 4. So yeah, back then, back in 1981 UK, you had BBC One, you had BBC Two, and in our case we had there you go, LFC saying 1982. We had STV, which is Scottish television. You guys had independent television. So you had 3 channels. So what you had to do was, on your TV, you had the button 1, 2, 3, 4. So before Channel 4 came along, you pressed Channel 4, and then how did it work again? Was there a test signal on the VHS which you switched on
on the back of the
video? Something?
Yeah, on the back of the video recorder, you set it to test, and there would be a black and white bar that went down like that.
Yeah.
And then you chose the channel on the telly, and then you used the little peg. Well, it depends on how old your telly was. We had a little plastic peg with bars that said UHF, and it had the signals, you know, low to high, and you screwed around with it until you got the bars on the screen, and then you take the test off, and there you are.
So once you tuned the actual device into the TV, you then had on your video player, you had like numbers. So number 1, you would say that's going to be BBC One. And how did that work again?
So again, on ours, we had a flap on the top of because we had a top loader. So the tape would be here, and there would be a flap, and you lifted the flap, and it would have exactly the same like the telly had got. It had got 1, 2, 3, 4 with all these lines, but it had a little dial, and you just moved the dial up and down until the BBC One come up. So there was no memory, and there was no digital search or anything like that. You basically tuned it in, and that's because you had the aerial going into the video recorder, and then a pass through to the telly. And that's how it all sort of like was set up. Yeah.
Mental. Kids don't know they're boring now, eh?
It was all manual. And I just remember that, you know, they said, I'm glad you're around because we haven't got a clue. Can you set the timer to record Coronation Street for your mum because she's going to be late? Yeah, all right, I'll set the timer.
And then you forget to do it, or else, you forgot to.
Well, then you got to remember to put the right tape in which didn't have a tab cut out, and then you had to make sure it wasn't going to record over something else, so you'd get it to that, and then you'd say, "I run a record on Monday at 7:30 on Channel 3," and you had to go through the stages. So first of all, it was, you know, the channel, then the time, then the date, then the time, and then how long.
That's right. Yeah, you had to
do a start time and an end time.
Yeah, and then you went through experience. You thought, I'll just put it to 40 minutes because I know who Coronation Street kind of runs on a wee bit. But just that phrase that I said about you don't know you're born. It was one of these ridiculous things that your parents would say to you. You don't know you're born. Or one of the favourites my mum would say to me, it was usually involved a shopping trip, and I would say, "Oh, can I get a toy? Toy? I'll toy you, my lad." That was her way of going, no. Bike? I'll bike you, my boy.
I'd go up to my dad and he'd go, "See your mum." And I knew that meant I got no chance, because I go up to my mum and she says, "Have you asked your dad? What did he say?" He said, "Go and see you." He said, "Right, well, the answer's no then." That was it.
Yeah.
So that was the end of the argument.
And what was if you were climbing a tree? Get down to that tree. If you break your leg, don't come running to me.
Oh, yeah, we had that. Yeah. I'll knock you into next week. I had that as well. That's good because I could get through the weekend. So that's at the end of the next week. Yeah, do it.
I've told you a million times, stop exaggerating.
Yeah.
Anyway, just before I was before I came up, I was watching Bohemian Rhapsody
Oh,
on the thing. A great film. Have you seen it?
Bohemian Rhapsody. What, a Queen? Oh, the Queen
Oh
sort of
yeah, the
Freddie
film.
Mercury thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I can't remember who played Freddie in that.
Oh, I can't remember the name of it. He's in
But
lots of things.
he was really good. I remember there's a scene on
Brilliant.
the back of a is it the back of a van, and he was talking to Brian May, and they sorted out forming a band together. I can't
Yeah.
remember if they covered the Kenny Everett period where Kenny Everett played
Yeah.
music. Did they cover? I couldn't remember if that
Yeah.
was in it. I remember the concert at the end was fantastic. Apparently, it was like
Aye.
really.
Yeah, probably the last half an hour is just them, and that's kind of pretty much what I was going to talk about. I, I was watching it, and actually, I kind of forgot that I was watching actors rather than
Yeah,
the real band. I mean, I wasn't probably like a lot of people. I wasn't a massive Queen fan, but they stole the show. Now the thing is, it's great that you're on tonight because you were actually at Live Aid, weren't you? You were there.
yeah. I was. Yeah, that was a day and a half. That was traveling on the train for the first time, sort of by yourself to get to London. Well, no, it wasn't the first time. Oh yeah, by myself because I went to PC sort of shows, but I used to go with a mate. You know what I mean? So this was the first time I was sort of going by myself, and then it was like understanding the tube, and then there was the mass exodus of people that were just moving in. And yeah, it was bloody hot. That's what I remember as well. Damn hot that was. But it was definitely an experience more than the concert, if you see what I mean, because you got involved with the people that were around you, and you watched the stage, and then afterwards, when you've seen the concert on telly, because I had it recorded on VHS, as much as I could tell my sister how to change the tapes over, because this thing was all day. Sort of thing. The tapes would run out, and I didn't want it on long play either. So it was just mental because you watched it back and you went, oh yeah, I remember that bit. Yeah, there was a person to the right of me that wouldn't fucking shut up all the way through.
How far from the front were you? I mean,
I was miles back.
Yeah.
I was way back. So they did this thing where you couldn't not have it as free for certain things, because if you were that far back, you were watching it on big screens. You know what I mean? But yeah, I was actually in there, but I was right at the back. I felt sorry for the people that were down on the ground that had that great big massive video and audio mixing control desk.
Yeah, right in the
middle. Because they took it right in the middle, looking at the stand. And if you were anywhere in the vicinity around the back of that thing, well, then you might as well have just said, "Well, I might as well not be here. Can't see nothing to the right, left."
Yeah. Again, I've mentioned it before. I actually had the opportunity to go to Live Aid. My mate Don said, there's a big concert in London. It's going to be quite a few bands playing. Do you fancy it?" And I'm like, "How much?" I think it was like, "Oh, it's 30 quid." I'm like, I'll not bother.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these landmark sort of events in my life, and probably a lot of people of a certain age. I mean, the sort of mid 80s, and it's for lots of reasons. I mean, for lots of reasons, was probably my most memorable, happiest kind of period of being alive. Um, you were young, you didn't have any responsibilities. Your parents were still there. You still had your family about you. Excuse me, computers were just growing.
Yeah.
Girls came along. You got an interest in girls, so it was everything about that. So when I think back to like Live Aid and even like Band Aid and all that kind, that just brings back this sort of an amazing kind of experience.
84, 85 does it for me. When
Yeah.
I'm covering computers of when was the biggest amount of growth for you, the most fun time that you had? I'd be saying, yeah, 84, 85.
Yeah, you were kind of,
You
you
know,
were like, you were sort of it was like the coming of age. You were growing from a kind of boy into a man. You were able to
yeah,
start drinking and just
yeah.
everything. It was an exciting period, wasn't it?
Yeah, because that covers the last year at school, unless you were going to go
Yeah.
to, like a college type thing, or going into university. So, basically that would have been you moving into a YTS or a job, or it was a big set of changes.
Mm-hmm.
The worst I think schools ever did, and one that they still do now, as far as I know, is that they, after the third year of being in upper school, in secondary school, should I say, they have a careers teacher come in and say, "What do you want to be?" And you go, "Oh, I want to be a NASA scientist or whatever it is." And then they look at your chart, of lessons that you've done and what your scores are, and they say,
Yeah,
"Oh,
report
well,
card.
I see you as being a factory worker or whatever it is," right? But you know what it is that just before that happens, you are supposed to sit down and choose what lessons you want to drop, what lessons you want to take on for the next 2 years, because those are the ones that you're going to take exams on and are going to be part of what's going to be your career. Well, of
Yeah.
course, I chose everything I didn't like, didn't I? I went, right, that's gone off, that's off, getting rid of all of that. And then I'll have, what could I fill it with? Oh, I'll have metal work. Oh, I'll have woodwork. Yeah, I fill it all with all this sort of stuff. Not thinking, I don't want to be a carpenter, right? I just wanted something, that wasn't maths, English, and science related. You did have certain sciences in when I was doing it that were dropped. You had to have a science, but you didn't have to have them all. So we had physics, chemistry, and biology, was it?
Yeah, that's what we
And
had as well.
you had to have one of them, but I could drop the other two, and I could fill it with something that really had no benefit to me in the real world
I was always,
whatsoever.
I was almost partly jealous. There was all, I mean, it's changed times now, but back in the 80s, there was like the clever people, the people like me who were kind of sort of, they were mediocre, and then you had like the stupid people, and they quite literally categorise you, the thick people that would never amount to anything,
Oh yeah,
and
class 1, 2, 3 of maths, or
yeah,
4, and if
and
you were in 4 or 5, you were below the average or something.
they used to get like the school owned a moped, and they used to get to like ride this moped, and we were sitting in chemistry class looking at the window, and all these bloody people are riding mopeds. I thought, that's not very fair.
Yeah, they had like engineer shop, didn't they, where you could work on
Yeah,
engines and that. Like I said, in the last 2 years, you could have chosen that, and you'd have been working on car engines, carburetors, all of that sort of stuff. But yeah,
yeah.
in the subject that you didn't like, but it was mandatory, you'd be looking out the window and going, "Yeah, no, he's working on that bloody great big truck over there. Look at that."
And you know the irony is, I've met a few of the stupid people at my school, and they're doing bloody well for themselves.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd love it. I mean, I'd love to turn around and say, yeah, all that maths and English, it did me well. I could now be a NASA scientist. No, I know how to make an enamel pen, an enamel badge pin, and I know how to throw a pot pretty well in pottery. But I can't do Pythagoras theorem for the. And I mentioned that one specifically because Colin mentioned Pythagoras to the other
Yeah.
day in one of my blogs. But there you go.
Yeah, I'm just looking. LFC's made a wee comment. He's plenty of respect for Queen, as my late nan was a massive fan of him. However, I find him a bit overrated. Same with ABBA. Um, I I don't know I'm gonna cause controversy here and say the most overrated band in my opinion is the Beatles.
Right?
I think they get way too much credit for what they actually did do. They do have some nice tunes, but people put them up there on a pedestal, and I don't really get it. But in the last, well, in the job that I'm in just now, it's the first work that I've been in where we actually have the radio on, uh, and obviously there's just music constantly. And you know what? It's the downside to it is there are songs that I used to love, and I've quite literally can't stand them now because do you think there is such a thing of just hearing a song too much to the point that you actually don't like it.
Well, there is when you've got such a high profile act as the Beatles, because they never shut up. I mean, 2 years will go by and suddenly somebody else will do a documentary as if they just discovered them. You know what I mean? When they've been around for years, and suddenly there'll be a spate of Hollywood action as well on that, and then Apple will suddenly start promoting all of their albums again, and then technology will come along and say, "Oh, we can bring John Lennon back to life," and it all
Yeah,
starts. It just goes in an endless cycle and cycle and cycle. But I think with the Beatles, to me, I mean, I tried to speak to my mum and dad about them, but I can't remember the whole conversations they had. But my dad always turned around and said they were in the right place at the right time.
yeah,
And
spot
I
on.
went,
I agree with that.
oh right, what do you mean by that? He said, well, it's just a matter of you mix in certain circles. It's almost like if you throw enough shit at a wall, some of it will stick. And if you ended up being a club where there was a big person that was looking out for acts, and they found you, and that particular person was hot at the time, and then introduced you to this, and then this, and then this, all of a sudden you've started a steamroller effect that just will not stop. And yet my dad will always turn around and say that sort of happened to the Shadows, but for whatever reason it just sort of stopped. And whether that was Cliff Richard, breaking away from them, or them turning around saying we've had enough, or whatever. I never really went into that because I wasn't a big Cliff Richard and the Shadows fan. But my dad was the Shadow. He loved the Shadows. And all of a sudden you just get to understand, yeah. So all those bands like Herman and the Hermits and all of that sort of stuff, they had success, but nowhere near that success that went to America, because the Beatles just had so much exposure. There was no way of sort of like fighting that exposure. You tried,
Mhm.
just
I think
wouldn't
with
do
the
it.
yeah, I mean, I think with the Beatles, as you say, it's like the perfect storm. They just, I mean, they were the sort of the first kind of rock and roll kind of thing. It was like the sort of the blues and all that kind of stuff. And the Beatles came along at the right time. And yeah, I suppose to most of the girlies out there, they were like a kind of boy band, so to speak. But it's just when you actually
Yeah,
listen to some of the music, I mean, there are some nice songs like "Hey Jude" and
yeah.
there are a few songs that I do like, but I just think
But
there's
the thing
there's
that I
plenty
used
of
to
groups like
love,
yeah.
yeah, the thing I used to love later on, after the Beatles has sort of like gone away, um, you had all these upper class people that would turn around and say, "Now this is genius how this song came along because it's in this key, and then they moved to
Yeah.
this and all of it." But whenever you hear an interview with Paul McCartney and say, "I can just about play the piano, and I was self-taught, and I did go to school, and I tried to learn it, and classical was sort of like in me, and all of this sort of stuff," but at the end of the day, I'm not a maestro. I'm not a Beethoven or a Mozart. I listened to a chord and then went to another chord, and somebody in the band would say, "How about doing a bridge between these two notes?" And it just worked
Yeah,
like that. It wasn't, oh, well, we wrote down on a sheet of paper and put all the notes on it, and then we got a masterpiece like you do with a film score.
it was all
That's the only
pre-
way of doing it. so
pretentious crap. Yeah, yeah,
So I like the fact that that's how it was. It was raw. That's how it was with computers as well. It wasn't about, I've got a book and it tells me how to do. I've got this library of routines that does this. You had to read this book and understand it and come up with another way of doing it. And you wrote it in your own way. And all of a sudden you had a game, but it was raw
yeah.
because you only had the books that were available. And it was only people that wrote those books that knew the knowledge of that. And even they probably didn't have a full grip of it. So it was a discovery, discovery, discovery all the time. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Just an interesting anecdote. In fact, just when I was working in that as a facilities manager, looking after this village down sort of down south a couple of years ago, there was one of the elderly gentlemen who was he's a lovely man, and he actually texted me today to find out how I was doing. And he was a Cockney. He lived in London,
Ah,
and he was a bit of a Dale boy. He was a builder, but he did a bit of this, a bit of that. And how did it come about? He done a he done a bit of work for somebody on this big house, and he didn't realise it was actually Cliff Richard's house. Then a few months later, somebody phoned and said, "Oh, is that John? Yeah, yeah." He says, "Oh, this is I'm phoning. This is Cliff Richard's secretary. We've Cliff has got or Mr. Richards has got some work he'd like done in his house." And he went, "Ah, yeah, that's fine, that's fine." So he got the keys, and and what he said to him was, "He says, would you mind not taking your van too close to the house? Could you maybe park it and then like sort of walk, because it's quite a posh area?" So he said he drove his van, and he had to bloody carry his tools to the house. He got in, and like there was, Cliff Richards wasn't there. He done the job, and then a few days later, the phone went. He went, "Is that John?" He went, "Yeah." Go, it's Cliff here. Who? It's Cliff Richard. He did about. Oh yeah. Everyone all right, all right. Oh yeah, I just wanted to say you've done a fantastic job. Really, really pleased. He says, thanks for doing that. He says, as a way of thank you, he says, I'm playing whatever it is, the London Apollo or something. I'm playing this concert tomorrow night. Would you like I've got tickets, front row tickets for you and your partner. So John went along with his wife or his girlfriend, whoever it was, and he had the front row seats. And he said he was standing. Cliff Richard came on, and John was like that. And John, because he was at the front row, he was able to kind of look up, and he thought that scaffolding doesn't look very safe. And he was kind of like that, and he's looking up. And and then the following day, Cliff Richard phoned him. "Oh, hi John, just wondered if you enjoyed the concert." He went, yeah, it was all right. But I'll tell you, that bloody scaffold, that needs looked at. That's not very safe.
You imagine that? Say, what you mean? I was in danger? How?
He was more interested in the bloody scaffolding than the actual concert.
You can imagine Cliff at the next day turning around and say, "You better look after that scaffolding. I've just been told by a specialist up there that I ain't having that on land on me."
But John's claim to fame, and I'll take it with a pinch of salt, but I don't see any reason why not. He said that he stole what was he called? Not Tommy Cooper. What was the guy? Half a sixpence. Tommy Steele. He stole Tommy Steele's girlfriend from him.
Oh, yeah. Which one? I mean, he had how many?
He was a bit of a boy, but
he was
anyway.
a bit of a boy, yeah.
But Live Aid. I mean, that was what was there any like standout moments for you? What would, in your opinion, was there one group that you went, "Wow, they were great"?
Elton John was there, so I'm obviously going to turn around and say that, aren't I? I thought it was quite funny what they did with Phil Collins. I didn't think about it at the time that this is supposed to be Feed the World and all that sort of stuff, and not about climate. But having him on stage and then getting him onto a Concorde flight and then flying over and then playing at the same concert but in a different place, I was just thinking, yeah, that's good climate then for you, isn't it? All that fumes and everything and all that. I didn't think of it like that, but of course, I like the ones that were catchy, that got the crowd going. So it didn't matter. Like Status Quo would come on and you'd be playing, whatever you want. No, it doesn't matter how many times I've heard it. It was just the crowd got up, and doing all of that. When some of the other acts. What was her name? Oh, Lisa Stansfield. I wasn't that, I sort of like switched off, even though fantastic singer and everything. They didn't really sing the songs that got the crowd buzzing.
I thought Howard Jones done quite a good set, but again, obviously Howard Jones is a solo artist, but he was good. Obviously, I'm not a fan of them, but I have to say U2 done a pretty good concert as well. They were good.
David Bowie was great. I suppose you've got to have quiet moments when you're doing that length of time. You know what I mean? So at the time, all I was doing, and I was just going, "Oh, I know this one," and I was jumping about a little bit. You know what I mean? When the quiet one was coming, I didn't even know the words to this one, so I was just looking around and all that sort of stuff. So I was probably happy at the time, but it's just that if you were a really music profoso type person, you'd have been riveted all the way from start to finish. There wouldn't have been a stopping point for you or a relaxing point. So I was probably glad actually that there was stuff on there that didn't really sort of like click with me.
Yeah, that's the thing though. Back when I think when you're younger, you tend to like certain types of music. So if you were, I was massively into Howard Jones. I wasn't really into Queen. I wasn't really into many other groups that took part. To be honest with you, obviously as an adult, you can look back with the old rose-colored spectacles and go, "Wow, what
Yeah.
a collection of people." But yeah, no, happy days, happy days.
I think a little bit like it would be like that now for me if I went to Glastonbury.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? I've watched Glastonbury. I've watched it from TV. I've been to Glastonbury, right? But what I'm trying to say is if I went to Glastonbury this year and you'd say all of these tents have got these acts on, I'd look down the list. I'd be going, dunno. Oh, the ones at the top. Yeah, I know that one. Know that one. The thing is, I'd probably learn an awful lot about that music, and I'd probably go away thinking there's a couple of bands there that I want to start listening to. And I think Band Aid was that for me because it was just so many acts, but they got they did get all the big names, but I think there was a couple that you wouldn't have considered big at that time. There, I mean, everybody
I
knew
was.
Duran Duran and Spandau
Yeah,
Ballet and
I
all of
wonder
that.
if Bob Geldof, because in that Bohemian Rhapsody, there's a scene where Freddie, hopefully, if you've not seen it's a spoiler. Freddie Mercury falls out with the rest of the band because he's getting too kind of
Yeah,
big headed and it's all about him. But he finds out about Live Aid and he says, "Oh, I want to do it," and his manager goes, "Too late. Bob Geldof's put the lineup out." Um, I'm wondering if there was a limit to how many groups they actually had. I mean, I think they had like, was it again in the film they see you had 20 minute slot.
yeah,
I
that's
don't
it.
know where
It was done by time, and that's
was
why
it. So
BBC. That's why the BBC were, if I remember rightly, were always they had a timing schedule, and it went all over the place because sometimes an act would stop too early or whatever it was, and you'd have to cut to the presenters, and the presenters wouldn't be ready, and all of this sort of stuff. And that's why they had to have Bob Geldof come up at one point and say, to recruit some money and all of this sort of stuff. That wasn't supposed to be happening. It's just that technical problems were going on the stage, and they
yeah,
needed that a little bit of extra time. So yeah,
did
you knew that was going on.
did Spandau Ballet take part?
I'm just trying to think. That's why I was just going. I
I'm sure
remember.
they probably did. I know they obviously took part in Band Aid. I'm just LFC's put down there. 1984 had some great acts: Simon Le Bon, like Duran Duran, Phil
Yeah,
Collins, Paul Weller, Midgeo.
Midgeo,
Not
yeah.
not a Paul Weller fan, I have to say, but like I think Duran Duran they appeared in the American one. They were in Philadelphia.
That's it, because there was what going on in Philadelphia, and Madonna and everybody was going to be doing all of that sort of stuff over there, and
Yeah,
that's where we had the international bit with Phil Collins. I don't think Phil Collins did anything like a Genesis set. I think it was just Phil Collins. He was doing his solo stuff at that particular time. But I'm just trying to think, did Mark, did the other members of Genesis, like, what was it, Mark, what's his
Mike
name?
Rutherford.
Mike Rutherford. I don't know whether because he had his own band, Mike Rutherford, didn't he? He did
Yeah,
tracks
well,
like Over Your Shoulder and things like that. I can't remember whether at that particular point he was doing.
LFC saying Spandau Ballet were in Band Aid. I mean, there was some kind of notable groups missing. Like, were Tears for Fears, were they in Band Aid? I
That's
don't
the
think they
sort of
were.
thing. I can't remember if Aha were there. You see,
Nah,
just
they
because they
weren't.
were just because they were in the single doesn't mean that they were actually in the actual Live Aid concert.
Yeah, Mike and the Mechanics, that's called.
Like in the Mechanics, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose they had to have a bit like the 12-hour. Not that I'm saying we're.
Yeah, your marathon, yeah.
Not that I'm saying that you're anything like Paula Yates and I'm like Bob Geldof, but yeah, the 12-hour live stream we had to say, right, that's it. We can't have anyone
I
else.
was just thinking back to that day. I remember now. Yeah, you kept saying, "Send us your fucking money." money. It's all we want. We want your money. That's all you kept saying on that day, wasn't it?
Just give me 2 seconds, Craig. What is it?
Yeah.
Sorry? Nah, no, thank you. Thank you.
You want anything from what?
From KFC. Do you want anything, mate?
No, I'm all right. I got my mother's supper, so I'm all right. Fine.
Dale wants a milkshake. Strawberry. In fact, can you get me a milkshake, Ava? Or a crush on whatever. Yeah, one of these things.
Oh, so I thought we were going to do the Freddie moment then of Bod, where you had to guess the milkshake. Was it chocolate this week or is it strawberry?
Right, doesn't matter. It's all right. No, I'm not wanting NT. Thank you. Right, thanks very much. What was I going to say? I suppose there would have been. They would have to have. They would have had to have had a kind of limit. I would imagine they would have probably sent out, contacted as many groups as possible, and then it was right. You know, you're in, like, you're too late, kind of thing. I mean, I think it all kind of came together pretty quick, didn't it? I think it did get.
It was put together really quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know whether it's a world record for getting that many people together in one place and all that sort of stuff. I just know, I mean, it was a record breaker for a number of reasons. I don't think it was that. But I mean, I can imagine the amount of people that did that work and they said, oh, no, you don't have to pay us. We did that for free. That's part of the Live Aid thing. So we put the scaffolding up for that. You know, that's okay. We're giving our services for free. All of that sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean?
The attention to detail in the Bohemian Rhapsody Live Aid section was brilliant. I mean, I was watching a bit of it, and then I had the real Live Aid, and where they had like the Pepsi Cola cups on the piano and the ashtray, and it was really well made. Cheers, LFC. He's probably gone already. He's had to disappear. AHA came out in 1985, so yeah, they kind of came out after Live Aid. Anyway, right, listen,
they were big. They were big after Live Aid. They were around before then. It's just that we didn't know about them. They were a Swedish act, weren't they?
Oh, you're probably right. Actually, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Right, listen, we're going to move on because I have got some questions from the last week's Friday Waffle, which I'll maybe I'll just leave them for me for next week. Actually,
I was going to say I put the topics for you in that you asked me to do.
Yeah, so I've got a few there. So now I'll keep that. I think we've got enough to talk about. What were we talking about? We were talking about something. I was talking about my mate collecting, and that got me kind of thinking about collecting. Collecting's a thing that seems to you do it, I do it, probably a lot of the people that are watching this do it. Is it primarily a male thing? And is it a hobby? Is it a passion? Is it an addiction? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
It's all of them. It's all of that.
You collect comics, you collect statues, you collect steel books. So you're pretty qualified to kind of talk about this. What do you think is the appeal of collecting? What is it that makes people want to gather things and have them on shelves? And
to me, it's very much like the old days of having a puzzle, you know, like a big jigsaw puzzle out. And I remember we were talking about Laurel and Hardy the other day, and there's a famous scene where they're building a jigsaw puzzle, and then everybody gets involved because you've got to find that one piece that goes in and all that sort of stuff. The jigsaw puzzle is good because you know that every single piece is there. But later on, when you put it away and you put it back up, you've always got that, is it all there? Collecting is very much like that. You know that there's a start. Hopefully there's an end, but it depends on whether something is still going now at the moment. And it's the joy of going, I'm going to get the whole lot. And when you start off in the middle of something, like I started my collecting of comics 12 years into the character that I like. I mean, he's 12 years old. So there's 12 years worth of stuff for me to backtrack on and then keep going on the day that I started collecting. You miss that month, and you then again you've got the hunt again then for last month's. And it was just on and on and on, relentless, until you get to an age like mine and you go, I'm now missing like 22, 23 issues out of a run of about 900 and something. And you're going, wow, I'm immensely proud of that. And at the end of the day, there's only a couple of things that I've ever completed and said I've now got the whole lot of. You know, when it comes to statues, I haven't got them all. When it comes to soundtracks, I haven't got them all. When it comes to comics, I haven't got them all. You know, there are many things, you know, where I can actually turn around and say, yeah, I've got all of those, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And some of that can come from reissue. And then you got to look to yourself. Some collector might turn around and say, well, a reissue then isn't you having everything, because that's a separate thing in itself. We're talking about the original things that come out when they are, you know, that's cheating. Just because you've got all those don't mean you got every album, because there's an album that was released in Japan and France and England and all of that. That's just talking about albums. So it's a huge thing. And really, the best thing advice I can give to anybody, because it is damn addictive, is make sure you're financially well enough to do it, because it will nibble into those and you will get addicted to the point where you will find other means to actually fulfill your destiny of having them all. That's one of them. Two, have you got the space for it? You know,
I think collecting, as you say, it needs to be something that that is affordable, because I mean, you've heard the cases where people's relationships have completely crashed and burned because of the addiction. I mean, there was a YouTuber, I can't remember what his name was. There was an American YouTuber, and he was just buying and buying and buying. He was one of the early YouTubers, and he had this like phenomenal video game collection, and he was just getting everything. And then eventually put out a video that I think his wife had left him, his wife, and she took the kids, and you know, that was it was very, very sad to see. You're like, holy shit. But I mean, so I mean, I can kind of get the, you know, collecting something that's a finite thing, like I don't know, say for example, Vectrex cartridges. There were only, I think, 23 games that were ever released. The chances of getting it all there is pretty well. You probably could get them fairly easily if you had a large wallet, because you know, some of the rare ones go for, I don't know, maybe £1,000 or something. But it's 23. It's not a lot. It's the same with people collect, you know, every American NTSC Dreamcast game, whatever. What is the point of that? Because a lot of the time, and I'm guilty of that as well. I've never been a collector for collector's sake, but I like to amass things. But I don't go, I want to get all these and I want to get all these. I just like to kind of keep getting stuff. But when you get a collection of, say, you get a collection of every SNES game and it goes on a shelf, and then that's it, you know.
But that was the point I was going to say at the end, is that depending on the hobby and what you're collecting, this is why I'm saying it's not a male thing or a female thing, because you could collect My Little Ponies or whatever it is, you know, it's whatever you're collecting. If you do something that's small and you actually do fulfill your collection and you have them all, what I've tended to find, because there are collections that I have actually completed, is you don't go back to it. It's like, I finished that. And yet it was all encompassing, that you had to have that one that was missing from your collection, and it took up the whole of your life. It was like, I'm searching every Sunday, I'm looking on eBay, every Sunday I'm looking on whatever it is, you know. Once you fill that collection and you put it on your shelf or whatever it is, and you can go, there you are, all in that little section, it's done. I will tell you now, doesn't matter what the hobby is, I think you'll find that you lose the exposure for it, and the worth goes away from it, because you'll never go back to it, because you're no longer thinking about that. You're thinking about the next thing that you're looking for in your collection. And you know, the playability. Say it was just games, I bet you wouldn't load one of them up again. They'll just be there. Oh, I
Yeah,
finished. I've got the whole collection. That's all you wanted to know, and
it's
you've
not.
managed to fulfill it.
You're not buying every Dreamcast game because you want to play every Dreamcast game. You're buying it because you're collecting it for collector's sake only.
Yeah,
Now I've got the perfect example of not it's not a full collection by any matter means, but all these handhelds that you can see there,
yeah,
the handhelds. Plus, I've got about another 10 of that up there.
yeah,
I had all these, and then I sold them, but I sold them to fund my first arcade cabinet. But before I sold them, they were taking up so much room. I thought I'll put them in boxes. I'll just put them up in the loft, and they were sitting in the
yeah,
loft. And then I remembered that I had them. I thought, yeah, I'll sell them, and I sold them for a ridiculously low price. And then after I got rid of them, I thought, oh, I wish I hadn't got rid of them. And I bought them all again, and I've now got probably more than I had before. And they don't do anything. They just sit up there. They sit up there. They look nice, but does anybody else come in and admire them? Not at all. I mean, a big thing for me, and I can't remember. I was talking to somebody on YouTube about this. Um, Collecting is, from my sort of point of view, is it's kind of two things. One, it allows you, like, all these things up there. When I was a kid, you saw all these in the shops, and you're like, "Oh, look at that one! I'd love that one. That's 40. I can't afford that." And your mum would buy you one, the cheapest one, whatever. Because we're older, we've got a bit more disposable income. You can now buy all the things that you couldn't get as a kid.
yeah,
So there's that kind of drives a lot of my kind of collecting, buying things. I mean, I was sitting bloody looking at what do you call it? I was sitting looking at the Evil Knievel thing on eBay a couple of weeks
yeah,
ago, and like I was hovering over it, and I'm like, "What are you doing? What the hell are you doing?" It's just like,
yeah,
oh, I'll buy that. It's just the nostalgia thing for a second, and then I didn't buy it. I'm glad I didn't buy it because it's a waste of bloody money.
yeah.
It's
I know what you're, because I tell you what, instantly when I see something like that, I'm thinking, I just want to feel it in my hands again. I remember sort of tactile how it felt when I was a kiddie having that in my hand.
yeah.
And I know full well that if I do actually go down that point and hit that buy button, then when it turns up, I'll be disappointed because it'll be like, I don't remember it being that brittle. I remember the hands being more spongy than that. Whatever. There'll be something about it that'll go, no, I don't remember that. And if this must be an earlier model or a later model or something. I'll be looking at anything that will take me back to that memory again, but I've ruined it all because I've got Evil Knievel in my hand, and
Mm.
obviously it is Evil Knievel. So
Do you think, apart from it being like nostalgic, do you think the desire to collect things from the past is just our way of trying to like bring back the past? Obviously, we lose loved ones. You and I have, I've
yeah,
lost both my parents, and you've lost your dad. You would give anything to get them back, and so to be able to get something, even if it's just a toy that you had back then. Do you think that is part of it? It's just to kind of rekindle,
I've
bring the
I've re-
past alive for a
I,
short
I
space of
I've
time.
yeah, I've wrestled with that all my life, Alan.
Yeah.
I mean, all I can turn around to you and say is, when I think of the happy times, I try to recreate that by getting stuff that reminds me of it. There were bad things that went on, but you don't think about those. You want the
Mm,
things that make you happy. And going back to a happy place in your past is a very healthy thing, because that's what you want. You don't want the negatives, you want the positives, and you think of the good ones, and that can then alter your day because you had a good thought, a memory that come back, and it makes you go, oh, I'm so glad that somebody mentioned that because it's brought back that happy feeling for it. But it doesn't last. You then move. We're constantly moving forward into unknown. We don't know what today's going to be like or tomorrow. So all I'm saying is, I find a comfort looking back, but I find a comfort looking back at the things that I had a comfort with at the time as well. And I try to recreate that modernly now, which
mm,
is pretty much impossible, I think. I don't think you can ever do it. You'll
mm,
always find something that will disappoint you about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Aye, I think the nostalgia is a major influence in people kind of want to kind of collect things or what.
It's a harsh mistress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another part, not so much now, but when I was, sort of was a wee bit younger, you always wanted to have everything just in case you had this desire that you wanted to watch some film that you hadn't seen, from the 80s, or you want to be able to play Pac-Man on the Atari 2600, or yeah. I've always had this hope that one day somebody, a friend, or somebody's going to come into my life that's going to be massively enthusiastic about like video games, and they're going to go, "Oh my god, I don't believe you've got that. Oh, can I have a shot at your Commodore 64?" And I remember, oh, hang on here, what about that there? And you can say, "Oh, you want to see that? I've got one here. There you go." It's never going to happen. It's never ever going to
No.
happen. But it's always nice to have things that you think, if somebody says, "Oh, I've not seen that film for years," you mean this? Bloody hell, I've not seen that for a long time.
Yeah, I don't think you're a nerd if you collect something, but you can be a nerd if it's something that is in many people's minds childish or something like that. You're considered a nerd. The computer is a very niche thing, and so is
Mm.
game consoles, and so is collecting dolls, and so is collecting statues and all of that. I don't think I'll ever find a woman in my life that likes Spider-Man, collects statues, listens to film scores, and watches
You'd be surprised, mate.
right, and watches the TV programs that I like, because it's like that Only Fools and Horses sketch that I remember with Del Boy and Raquel, when he goes, they're trying to get rid of all the stuff that was in the shed, and he said, "What's the chance of you finding a Bros fan that's into apartheid, who likes deep sea diving and is called Gary?" Because he's got all this crap in it. So I look at that all the time and say, what's the chance of me finding someone that like computers and Spider-Man? And not going to happen. So yeah, but I've always tried to keep. I think films and TV is my happy medium, because at some point somebody's been to the pictures and somebody has been and watched something on TV. And you never know, you might find somebody that likes gangster films, and you'll say, "Oh, I love The Godfather. Oh, do you remember that happened in Godfather 3?" And you go, "Yeah." Or "Oh, I've only seen the first Godfather. Oh, do you want to come round? You can watch Godfather 2 and 3 on my big screen," or whatever it is. It's sort of like an opener of something that will start something off, because you found somebody A that's talking about something that you know a little bit about, and B, you've got shit loads of that sort of stuff that you can just put in front of them and go at any point, "Yeah, I'll put it on my Dolby surround system there. This will impress." You know what I mean? And it's like that. You know what I mean?
But it's funny though, because when you think about it, before like I started doing YouTube, uh, I was pretty much on my own as far as having an interest in old systems. None of my none of my friends had any interest in old systems. Oh, pardon me. They were into video games, but they were only ever into the sort of the most kind of current thing. They weren't interested
Yeah.
in the Commodore 64, whereas I was. Um, and through YouTube, I mean, you and everybody that's watching this, we're all, yous are all the guys. If I dare say, if you guys lived 5 minutes away, you would probably love coming into this room and go, "Oh, bloody hell, can I have a shot of that? Oh, look at this! Oh,
Yeah.
well." And it's like, when I came down to your bit, you're looking, "Oh, I remember that." And it's so we are
Yeah.
we are these people, but we're obviously spread all across the world,
Well, yeah.
and I mean, fortunately, through the powers of the internet, we can actually kind of come together and
Yeah.
and kind of wax lyrical about things that we kind of
I
share an
mean,
interest in.
just to go back a little bit, I mean, I've never wanted to go back in the past and make it now. You know what I mean? What I'm trying to say is I've always wanted to get that feeling, the experience of the past. Do you see what I'm trying to get at? Because I didn't want to come across like I buy all my stuff because I want to live in the past. What I'm trying to do is have that happy feeling
Recreate
and move.
that
So
feeling.
yeah, so what I'm trying to say is I want to experience it again, but I don't want to recreate it modernly. I know that I live in the now, and I'm making new memories. Well, all I'm trying to get is I didn't want anybody to think that I was buying stuff and because I want to live back there. No, I don't want to live back there, but that happy place is lovely to feel that warmth, sort of like it's a weird thing. It's like having a chemical released in your brain that just makes it basically give you that fuzzy feeling. Go, oh, wasn't that great? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just wanted to get that across.
Thing is, I think every or most there probably are some people out there that have no interest in nostalgia. But I know, like my dad, he had created his own website, and he used to like have all these sort of friends from like that he knew from school who had since lived all over the world, and they would sit and play like songs from the 40s and the 50s. So the nostalgia is a
Yeah,
thing that's always existed. It exists in kind of every music, films, comics, video games, toys.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, at what point? And I think we've had this conversation before. I get a lot of happiness out of just looking about and looking at all these things, and as you do as well. Do you think you'll ever just get to a point and say, right, you know what, it's going, it's all going, I'm going to sell it
ooh,
all, or are
mm,
you quite happy to pass away and just kind of leave it?
yeah. I think that last statement is best.
Yeah.
There are. It's funny. Literally only yesterday, I drew a line in the sand and said, I'm going to stop statue collecting. And I found the perfect statue for me to stop my statue addiction. And it was this big, massive, sod off statue that just came out literally about, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. And it's a diorama piece, right? It's a quarter scale, 7 character piece that's 52 inches tall, has got seven quarter scale figures going around it, making this lovely diorama. It weighs 256 kilos when you put it all together, and
See that again?
it's like 200. I can't quite remember, but it came in 5 boxes weighing 56 kilos each. So that would be 200 or 300 kilos. This thing when you put it
What,
all
about a
together,
third of a ton?
right?
Bloody
No
hell.
word of it. So, and I can believe that, but it's a damn heavy thing. All I can say about it, right? The thing costs $3,200 or pounds at the
Well,
moment, and there are only so many of them being made, right?
sorry, I'm just sorry to interrupt there, Craig. Colin Jones has just put 3,200. He made that comment before you mentioned the price. How? I'm not with
Yeah,
you.
because I put
How?
it in Discord. I said this is the statue that I'd love
Oh,
to
right,
own
right,
right
right, right,
now.
right. I'm
No,
thinking
I'm
it's
saying
Colin.
this. Yeah. So this only happened yesterday, right?
Yeah.
So I put it in there and I said, look, I think I found a statue that would end my statue collecting, right? But the trouble is would it? Because I'd get it, I'd put the damn thing together, right?
Yeah.
The next thing it would be, where are you going to display it?
Yeah.
And I'd be going, no, I ain't got nowhere to display it. But you think I always end that argument by saying, but I'm not always going to be like that. At some point, I'm going to have my own place, or this house will be just me rattling around in it. One of those rooms is I'm eyeing up as being just the statue room or something like that. So I ain't worried about that, right? But the thing is it worth £3,200? And would it stop your statue collecting? Because I can tell you now, unless I actually block every statue site, there'll be one in a year's time that will come out that will say, this is now the largest Spider-Man statue in the world, and it's come out. It beats the last year's model of this one, which came out last year. And I'd be going, yeah, I want that one now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's very difficult with a hobby like mine to stop. and put that line in the sand. I started off collecting statues because I just wanted a couple. Oh, wouldn't that be nice if I had those on my mantelpiece? Right? Trouble is, it was part of a set. And then when that set finished, it was next year's models. And it went on and on and on. And then the YouTube broke out and everybody started showing off their collections. Then there were IKEA cabinets full of them. And they said, oh, I've put Thor here and Loki here. And I've got Odin, the All-Father, behind him. And underneath there, I've got the Fantastic Four set. You've got Galactus and all of this. And I'm going, oh, don't they look beautiful? He said, yeah, and under the cabinet to the right, I've got the X-Men universe and I've got the Avengers. And I'm going, it's now getting a bit silly. And then later on, it just goes on and on and on. And then you suddenly find out what I only wanted to be was a couple of pieces. I now want thousands. It's just gone on and on and on. That's all I want to say about it.
That is the downside to collecting. I mean, I'm fortunate. The things that my hobby, that the things that I buy are usually video game related. Yeah, I don't buy anything else, and they're not. I mean, I don't buy much at all now. They're not particularly expensive. Maybe I might, if something came a couple £100, like the Mister, that was £400. But it's been a great thing. But I mean, a similar hobby, and a few of my friends have sizable collections, and it's just exactly what you said about the collecting. Where do you stop? It's arcade cabinets or pinball tables. These things are expensive, and when you've got 2 or 3, you want another one, and you want another one, and it's that's the downside to.
The reason I put it there was because, like you, I looked at the price and I went, "That's ridiculous! 3,200. Christ!" I remember buying my first car and it was in the hundreds, and yet this statue, which is just made out of polystone, costs $3,200. Right? Whichever way you look at it, I thought to myself, that sticker shock alone makes me go, right, you stop here. Because you were mental to buy something like that. Just think 3,200, what you could do with £3,200. That's the end of it. It's just, some people would go, 3,200, that's ridiculous amount of money. But actually, if you look at it, it's not. I mean, the amount of work that went into a modeler to make this thing and then engineer it, take it apart, build it again, make it into a feasible device. And it really looks like a 3D photo. That's what statues are. They are your comic book suddenly turned into realistic, in your face.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I've over the years, you'll buy something. If I told like my sister, oh, what's that thing there? That's a Mister. What does that do? It plays games. How much is it for? £400.
Yeah.
£400 now in today's money is not an awful lot when you think of what you can't, things that you can't buy that you can buy for £50 and whatever. But my argument has always been, well, A, you need to be able to afford it. And secondly, if you're going to make use of it, then it's worth every penny. I've bought a lot of things. There's lots of things that I've bought. The prime example was the Spectrum Next. I bought that. I mean, lucky enough, I got it on the first Kickstarter.
Yeah, the first batch, doesn't it?
It was like £200 or something. And I did an unboxing. I did a video. Well, this is the best thing ever. And it sat for literally 2 years. You could see it in every video, behind me.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an utterly pointless purchase. Never used it. Not used it. And I thought getting rid of it. And so that's why I'm quite happy to get rid of a lot of my stuff. The problem I've got, I mean, I've got. You get these big, 20-litre plastic tubs from Mazda. You buy them. I've got 9 of them under my bed, and I've got about 6 or 7 in the cupboard, and they're rammed just with video game tat.
Yeah.
I've got a ZX81. I've got a Spectrum printer. I've got Atari 400 manuals. I've got instruction booklets for Magnavox Odyssey. I mean, the irony being, every single thing that's in that box, you could probably, if you get arsed, you could probably put it on eBay and sell it. But I can't be bothered. But I've got all this stuff that's just like I don't want to throw out. But then there's again, I want to get rid of stuff, but it's how do you sell things nowadays? eBay is just a pain in the arse.
I must admit, even if I knew how to do it, and I know about the many methods, I think for some of it, I'd find it the hardest thing is to get rid of it. Be like, oh no, I don't want to get rid of it now. And I would be like that scene in that 40-year-old virgin where he had all of them dolls all around, and his girlfriend said, "Oh, I can help you make millions. You could be the next millionaire because these
Craig,
dolls."
go and give me two. Craig, that's the door. Just give me 2 seconds, mate.
Yeah, of course.
Hang on.
He's gone for a KFC. I thought she'd gone off for a KFC. How's she answering the door?
Oh, she's no. She can't drive. No, she orders bloody food and then she's too busy talking to her pals. You can't hear the door. Yeah, I suppose. See, I can kind of get where you're coming from, not wanting to get rid of things, because all these systems that I've got, I can effectively, all these systems exist to play video games, and I can play all these video games using my PC or the Mister or the plethora of handhelds that I've got. So whilst I might not have a Sega Saturn to look at and hold the joystick, I can still play the games. Whereas if you've got a 3D model of, Spider-Man, whatever it is, you sell that, it's gone. It's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone completely. So I do kind of get why you're reluctant, unless you see it. I'm happy that I've had my fun with it.
The biggest reluctation, really, for me, is something that I've bought that is years and years old, and how much I paid for it, and how much work I had to do to actually buy that in the first place.
Yeah.
And get rid of it, right? So I've still got some VHS tapes, right? I've still got some Doctor Who VHS tapes, some Star Trek VHS tapes, right? They all cost me, like, from WH Smith, $9.99, whatever it was, back in the 80s, 90s. And I just know that every 2 weeks they were bringing out these as a collection until I got the whole lot. And then I had them all on VHS tape. And now they're worth nothing because VHS is a dead medium. And there's very few people that want it. And you can't even get rid of it at a car boot sale. Yeah, I know I spent $9.99 on every single one of those tapes. And if I put them all together, it comes to thousands. And I'm there going, I'm sending that to landfill. No, I'll rather keep it. Yeah. But then you haven't got the space, and I'm forever battling that.
Have you ever? I mean, what's his face? Retro Man Cave. He set up a little area of the museum thing that he's got.
Yeah.
And he's turned it into a little computer shop from like the 80s with the games and all that kind of thing. And then you can pick and you can play the game. There's a guy. I saw an article on the internet a couple of years ago. Apparently, there's a guy, I think in Dundee, of all places, he's got like the biggest collection of VHS tapes, and he says that people will want to give them away, like 400 tapes, and he's got them in his shed, and his wife thinks he's mad, but he still likes to play them and all that kind of thing. I'm probably going to answer the question for you here, but I'm guessing if you had like a massive like mansion house with loads of bedrooms and space, that you would want to recreate like a sort of, not a Blockbusters was more modern, but an early video shop, and you would buy all the you'd buy all the videotapes, and you just have them all along the walls. The big VH. That would be pretty cool. Like, just to look at the boxes.
I'd have bookshelves and all of that sort of stuff, and I'd have a section that says the past or something, and have my VHS stuff there, and I'd say, "Here's my Laserdisc collection," and it'd be like this, and then the DVDs, and I'd have it going like a timeline, going around. So you get to the 4K section, and then that you go through a magic room. This door here, and you go to your cinema projection room, and there you are. You can watch it all from there, and in whatever format you want me to play it from, because I'll connect the video recorder to the projector if you want. I'd love that. Yeah, of course I would. I know it's never going to happen.
Yeah, and it's the same with me. You know, I would have all my systems set up with joysticks and TVs and all that, but that's never ever going to happen.
I always turned around and said that I would have a statue room, though. I mean, I must admit, I've never turned around and said I'd have my comics, a comic room, because that's boring. Comics go in boxes.
Yeah.
So, you know, what's exciting about that? But a statue that you put in a glass cabinet with lighting and all of that, and they are hand painted and they look immaculate, is different. And I've always said to myself, yeah, I'd love a walk-in room where I could put all my statues up, you know, 30 years worth of collecting there. Look, just in that room.
I mean, one of my mates, the mate I was talking about that was writing his films, and he would stay in and he would want to edit the adverts out and all that kind of stuff. He's got a really quite a comprehensive collection of film posters, and some of them are worth a fair bit of money. And the sad thing is, they're rolled up in cardboard things, and they're in the loft. He buys them and he puts them in the loft, and he says he's never likely to ever really get to see them again.
Well, the only thing I know about posters is that if they're rolled up, that's wrong for a start, because I think cinema posters were what they call quad posters. They were massive posters. They were all folded. You can actually see the folded creases that made them up. They were never rolled. So that would be wrong if he's got the quad posters, you know, quad posters of
he's got
old films.
I mean, he's got some like the, I don't know. He's got a lot of the originals, like of the Hammer House of Horror ones.
Yeah.
And apparently, he did a swap. He swapped. I don't know. Was it like the original like werewolf one or Dracula? It was something really, really, really rare. He swapped it for something. I don't know, like
it is a huge thing, though, isn't it? I mean, I mean, just thinking about that, there would be a poster for Taste the Blood of Dracula in Italian, French, German, English, the American one. There'd all be parts and parcel of a hand-drawn Dracula or whatever it is, or in other countries it would be photos, or whatever of a montage type thing.
He had one of these really rare ones, or was it I can't remember, and he swapped it for like a Super Nintendo or something with somebody, and then a couple of years later he found out this thing was worth like 10 grand.
That's what I mean. I'm going, bloody hell! If you had an original Star Wars quad poster that was at the cinemas, because there's a myth that says that you could never ask for the poster at your local cinema, because you'd always be told no, because the companies tell you need to burn them after they've been shown.
That's
they need to burn them.
Most of his, he just used to ask.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. So that myth goes away, because I've always asked for the posters, and they turned around and went, no, you can't have it. We're told to burn them by the company that gives us the tapes once we're finished with them. And it's a myth. Of course, I'll tell you who has them: the projectionist, the owner of the cinema. They all take them home. Because they'll sell them on eBay as soon as they're sacked out of their job, or they leave it. In 10 years' time, that'll be their nest egg. That's the reason. But the subtle answer that is usually given to people is, you can't have that poster because we're told we have to burn it. That's why you don't find them in the skips around the back, because we used to go around the skips around the back of the cinema to see whether they were checking all the
I was at the pictures with him not that long ago, and there was a film poster for something. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't the Barbie film. It was something. And he thought, oh, my wee boy would love that. And he said, I don't suppose I could have that poster. And the guy went, no, give me 5 minutes. And he came back. There you go. And he just handed it out.
Yeah. But I do think that there are posters that are what they call givable out to the public. You see what I mean? Like smaller. You know, stuff like lobby cards and all of that sort of stuff. But I think the actual one that goes in the light boxes
on
that
the
stand
front
outside, no chance. You've
Yeah.
got, you've got more luck, more chance of having than finding rocking horse shit. Do you know what I mean? Right? Ain't gonna happen. And I was told that for years because I used to love going to the cinema. I'd go to cinema club and I'd come out and I'd go, "Oh, can I have that Meteor poster?" Because I'd seen the film Meteor. No, you can't have that. No, it's going to be burnt
Yeah.
or whatever. And
No, I
there
know.
was, Aristocats and all of the Disney stuff. The amount of times I went in and had that, and they all said no, can't have that.
No, I know. I know the majority. I mean, I think he's bought a lot, but the majority of his collection was he would ask and they say, "Aye, that's fine." So
Yeah,
just obviously, just because it goes to whoever what kind of jobs worth person you had, I suppose. But listen, mate, we're kind of time is starting to run out. We're going to finish with one last kind of thing to discuss. We've spoke about it in the past, but like all my waffles, there is a lot of repeating because there is when you've been doing this for like 11 years, you do you do have old topics. But talking about collecting and what have you, do you think like the interest in the sort of like the retro scene, the 8-bit, 16-bit, do you think that's kind of peaked? And at what point do you think in 20 years' time people are still going to be making videos talking about the ZX
yeah.
Spectrum and people are going to want to collect these games, do you think? Or do you think when our generation dies that thing is going to largely kind of cease to be?
I always think that it's pits and troughs, to be quite honest, because the amount of times that I was told that the comic industry is dead and then it resurrected itself, something came along that resurrected it, and then a whole
Yeah,
new audience is there, and then that whole new audience is then gets involved with the what happened back in the 80s then, and then they all look up everything about the 80s, and then they get all engrossed with YouTube and anything that they can find on it. I just think it's in pits and troughs. I think we've reached a plateau, but I just then think that plateau will dip. It will then probably go down to nothing, and then all of a sudden something will bring it back, and it will go back up again, and then because of the years, like 10 years has passed, it will suddenly become the next. The old thing brought back again. You know what I mean? Like vinyl. I mean, everybody thought that was a dead thing, and everybody thought it was
yeah,
gone. And now all of a sudden there's a resurgence of it. And I was going, well, it never went away.
yeah.
It's just that people wanted the next big thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the people largely who are into this sort of the whole 8, 16-bit scene are old farts like you and I because we were all there at the very cusp of the whole industry. So we've got the nostalgia, we've got the excitement, we've got it was just a wonderful time of life. When we go, that's going to die with us. Because yeah, I don't believe that a kid that's like 5 years old now is going to have any interest in
No,
this SNES. He may stumble over a waffle in years to come and go, "What the hell was that?" And
it's like that
it's
Back to
just,
the Future scene, though. Do you remember when
yeah,
Marty McFly goes into the future and there's these two
yeah,
kids looking at this duck hunt game, and he says, "Oh, I used to play this as a kid," and he was firing at it, and then these
yeah,
kids turn around and said, "Oh, that's just a kid's game," and they walk away, and yet he was sort of like going, "Oh, this is the most exciting thing going," because that was his youth, and it was like that's what I think happens now. People
yeah,
look at stuff and they go, but my 4-year-old would get bored of that in 15 seconds. They wouldn't
yeah.
wouldn't
I
be
think it.
interested in it.
I think it's personally. I think there will always be one or two people who if I had if I had a sibling or a child that was actually interested in this, then I dare say, when I kick the bucket, I'm not saying they'd make YouTube videos, but they'll still sort of, oh, I've got a Super Nintendo and whatever. But I do think that, I think once the sort of like our generation goes, anyone born after in the year 2000, I think in 40 years' time, I think you're not really going to. You're not. Well, there's Calden of Stardust is saying, not true. All speedrunning is big with younger crowd. NES and Sega Genesis games fit that niche perfectly. Yeah, I think that's a thing at the moment because people are still talking about the Sega Genesis and the Mega Drive and the SNES and all that. But I think in 40 years' time, I think YouTube's going to look completely different. I think you'll be lucky to find a retro gaming channel on YouTube.
Mm,
Or it
yeah,
might be I've got this old. My granny gave me this PlayStation 6. Look at it. Let's see if it still works. But I don't. I really think I don't see it still existing. I mean, I was talking to when we're playing the radio at work. They were playing a lot of electronic music, and they were
Yeah,
talking about Howard Jones and they said Jean Michel Jarre.
Kraftwerk or something.
Jean
Yeah,
Michel Jarre. Now the two guys that work with Scott and Chloe, they'll be mid-30s, 35. And I says, have you heard of Jean Michel Jarre? And she kind of just looked at me and went, nah.
who's that? Yeah,
And I said, Scott, have you heard? He went, you mentioned him not that long ago about he did a gig in Paris. I says, aye. He goes, aye, but so there you are. They're 35. They don't really know who Jean Michel Jarre is. So
yeah,
it's already happening. You know what I mean?
yeah. Like I said, it's you know, I mean, I must admit, I've heard the term prog rock, but really, I think prog rock came back into fashion when Top Gear came back and Clarkson suddenly started talking about prog rock, listening to music in his car and all of the bands and stuff that he was listening to, and suddenly there was a Top Gear album that had full of prog rock stuff, and then suddenly everybody was going, "Oh, I'm gonna have to start listening to Rick Wakeman and all of this sort of stuff," and all of a sudden it just comes. It's a steamroller effect. It's somebody mentions something out the past that is a weird word, then you go and look, and then it's suddenly steamroller effect and go, yeah, that was good stuff. That
I mean, do you think in 20 years' time they're going to bring out a SNES Mini or a Commodore 64 Mini? I don't think so because people are not know.
Although this year that we already know that last week, and everybody I'm pretty sure will know in the chat, that the Atari 400 is now a Mini.
I heard about that. Yeah, I know somebody mentioned that in the question, so I'll probably talk about that next week actually. But
yeah, I don't want to talk about it now. But I look at those minis now, and I look at them as being like key rings. I'd like them, and I'd like them on my shelf because they look like the model that I bought. Do you know what I mean? So there's a Commodore 64 mini. I don't want to plug it in and play it. I actually just want it on the shelf to go, there's a miniature representation of it. Because I tell you what, it saves more space than having the bloody great big Commodore 64 on the shelf, tilted and looking like that.
Well, it's interesting you've mentioned that because last week I realised that I've not played any of my mini systems, the Amiga Mini, the Mega Drive Mini, the SNES Mini, PC Engine Mini, and I've now packed them all in boxes and they're sitting on a shelf.
Yep. And I'll tell you what, it's exactly the same apart from the Amiga Mini for me, because I did download yesterday the new image for the Amiga gaming system. And I'm key to putting that into the actual player and playing it to see what it's like. But as soon as the joy of that's gone away, I'll be back to the Mister and just playing the Amiga on there. I just want to see what the kerfuffle is about the Amiga gaming system 2.5.
Just before we wrap this up, I was listening to the Retro podcast last week, and they mentioned something that was in the news, and I don't really listen to the news as much, but they apparently when the SNES came out, obviously it was like revision A, and then they tweaked it, and revision B came out. There's some scaremongering. I don't know how much truth is in it. That the revision A it's almost like a ticking time bomb. It'll just stop. It'll actually get to a point in the processor. It'll just stop working. There's been reports that there's something in it. Yeah, it's just actually going to stop working. And this is
the only thing that I can think of with that is I find that a laugh, because is there something inside the SNES that's got a clock that recognizes that today is that day? And there isn't. There's no battery, there's no clock, there's no internet connection to it. So you'd have to have that purposely designed in the BIOS.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And it would have to constantly have power for it to do that. Otherwise, I don't understand how it can work that way.
Aye, you're right. Somebody who buys one in 1992, plays it for 5 minutes, thinks don't like it, put it away, put it in the loft, and then their grandkids find it 40 years later, and they plug it in. As far as that SNES is concerned, it's only been played twice. It doesn't know that
Exactly.
35 years. So
There's no clock. There's no clock. There's nothing that connects into the
Yeah.
internet to say I'm in a different location, in a different place, in a different part of the
Yeah,
world.
I'm just sort of telling you what they were talking about. They'd heard that when the people were talking about it. Interesting.
It's very
it'd be
much.
interesting to know.
I heard the last time I heard stuff like that was during the Millennium Bug.
Aye.
That's the last time I heard stuff like that. Things are going to end because it's going to tick over, and suddenly it's not going to know anything, so it's going to put 00 there instead of what it is, and that means that it won't know what century it is. It could be 1800, let alone 2000.
Aye.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never really. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Be interesting to know this SNES thing, how it would, what's going to stop it working. It might just be.
I don't know enough
scaremongering.
about the subject, but I do know
Yeah.
this: there are no real batteries in my DSLR camera, right? Yet it says on there that the shutter lens has got a counter on it on how many times you touch the shutter. So it's good for 40,000 shots or 50,000 shots, they say, the body of this camera is. If it's got no battery, how does it count those things? And where does it store that count? Has it got one of those little dials that counts the numbers somewhere, like a pedometer, where you control it? Because
it's like an analog counter.
how does it know when I turn it off that I've actually I took 1,000 shots yesterday? How does it know? It's got to store it somewhere. And if there's no battery and the battery decreases, how does it know then that I've done 40,000 shots or 50,000 shots?
That sounds a lot of bollocks. I think it's just. I think we're on them, mate. I think they're talking shit.
Well, all I'm saying is it's an estimate. When somebody turns around like Canon and says this camera body is good for 240,000 shots,
yeah,
you can press the shutter there. That means somebody has pressed that button and counted, and it's then knackered at the end of 240,000 shots, which is the equivalent of whatever.
Michelle is saying there EEPROM, non-volatile memory.
Yeah.
Is that what would be in the SNES possibly? I don't know.
An EEPROM is like a ROM chip that's programmable. You used to be able to take the chip out, put it into something, reprogram it, put it in. But at the end of the day, how does it know the date has changed? I still go through that whole point. There, you do not switch the SNES on like the Xbox and say put in the date and time.
Yeah. Yes.
The Dreamcast did. The Dreamcast did. The Xbox did. Anything in that period did. I think even the PlayStation. No, the PlayStation didn't. PlayStation 1 didn't.
No.
So you're talking about really a period of time where PCs were involved and the internet grew. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing. There's nothing that connects it to the GPS system. There's nothing. That SNES story doesn't ring true, but it does for certain consoles. That's what I'm saying.
Evening, Trev. You have quite literally joined just as we're about to wrap it up.
But all I wanted to know from you, Alan, is this week have you played your Power Wash Simulator? Because I want to know how you're getting on with it.
No, I've not. I might actually play it tonight. No, I did give the VR one a go. I found it quite boring. It was too easy. But I'll maybe. I'm still kind of working my way through the bonus level, so I might give that a wee go shortly.
I just knew that you really like that game, so I thought I'd ask, what game have you been playing this week? Because you've got to bring up a game that you've been playing this week, because it's a retro channel, haven't you? So there you go.
What have I been playing anything this week?
Well, what about your Pal Kiddie RGB, whatever it is? Have you played on that?
I still, before bedtime, I usually fire it up and.
What's your game What's a game of choice when you flower that up?
Honestly, it's fantastic, because what I've been able to do is the Amiga hard drive image that we put onto the Mister. You can put that onto the Powkiddy, and it just bloody works.
Yeah.
So, so I mean, I was sitting listening to some demo music on it. It's a great little thing.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. What about yourself, mate? You games wise, have you been playing much?
This week I've been playing a game called on Steam called Wall World, which is a bit like Dome Keeper. If ever you've seen one of my videos, Dome Keeper is a boulder dash like mining thing, but it's also a tower defense thing where you have to every 5 minutes you have to go back up to your device and protect yourself. Otherwise, that's going to blow up and it's the end. Wall World's exactly the same. You're in a spider that crawls up and down this wall, and you mine stuff that's inside the wall. That every 3 minutes you're being attacked by invaders that try to attack your spider. So you've got to keep leveling up and trying to get stuff. So yeah, I've been playing that, but I've been mostly rediscovering stuff on the PlayStation 1. You remember I told you that I've been using ROM Manager and clearing down a lot of
Yeah,
stuff.
that reminds me. You need to
So,
give me a wee tutorial on that. I've got it installed, but I can't. I don't know what to do. So yeah, we'll
oh
maybe
yeah, that's easy.
we'll try it. We'll not do it live because that'll bore the shit out of people. I'm looking at a controversial statement by Mr. Trev. Trev Story. Amiga, another that's aged badly.
Mhm.
Interesting. He mentions about the PlayStation 1 aging badly, and I totally agree. I think the PlayStation 1 has aged badly because of the
Yeah,
3D graphics, and that is clunky. Has the Amiga aged badly? Mm,
I think the Amiga's got one of those reputations that it keeps refreshing its fan base and keeping it alive, because you can take that old tech and add accelerator boards and bring it up to speed. We never thought that there'd be a day that the Amiga would have a hard drive, and when it happened, you had a hard drive, and it
yeah,
was always trying to compete with the PC. But at a certain point, the PC would take over because it was far more versatile and far more willing to turn around and say, "This is what you should have now." And the trouble with Amiga and people like me that had the early Amigas is it will always stay with us, and you were wowed by what it looked like, and you like to go back to those days, and you can still play those days. And you can only imagine what Amiga would look like today if they'd have continued to be innovative like they were in the very first model. As far as I'm
yeah,
concerned, the Amiga took a step back when the A500 came out. I had the A1000.
yeah.
I thought
Now what?
the A500 was a cut down version of my 1000. The A600 is a cut down version of the A1200, but it's too
Yeah,
late. It's
yeah,
where does the Amiga 600 fit? It's nothing. It fits nowhere. It's you with PCs, and this was in the retro thing this week. With PCs, you were happy to let go the past and keep moving forward. There's a point where you turn around and went, "Oh, I'm happy to upgrade my graphic card to play this new game." Boom, and take your old one out. But you'd never do that with an Amiga. With an Amiga, it's like, "Oh no, got to keep it as it
mhm,
is. It's gorgeous as it is."
yeah. And
So
right, Trev's just added when he made the statement about the Amiga dating badly. It's one button games, and yeah, I do get that.
yeah,
My argument would be the Amiga almost was like the perfect swan song to the 2D game. Um,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. I'd say that. Yeah,
you know, um, where the Amiga started to fail was when it started to try and compete with the PC with like your sort of your Alien Breed 3D and all that kind of stuff. But you know, after the Amiga stopped, or I know people say, "Oh, it's still going," but you know what I mean. When the
yeah,
Amiga was superseded sort of with the PC, the Amiga was all about 2D games, and then and so was like the SNES and the Mega Drive, and then the PC started doing 3D, and obviously we've now moved into games that look like almost photorealistic. But no, I think for what it is, I wouldn't say the Amiga has aged badly. It's a snapshot of time. We've moved on on a technological basis. We've moved on. We've got much better graphics, better sound. Um, but I go back and play the Amiga, and it's great. It's really, really good. The problem for me is with it's interesting what Trev's saying there. He worked in the Amiga and loved it at the time, but he's got no love for it now, which is absolutely fine.
But the question though was about aging, wasn't it? And what I've got to turn around and say to that is, ray tracing came around when I heard about Pixar and they were making Toy Story, and you could actually make 3D objects and make them reflective and all of this sort of stuff, right? And I saw the Amiga juggler, and you could see the man juggling and all of this sort of stuff. As far as I'm concerned, you could still make a TV program and use an Amiga and a Genlock, and from that point of view, it has relevance. So it hasn't aged. If you can still make a TV program ready for broadcast right now, and all you need is an Amiga, a camera, and a Genlock device, then it's relevant. And that means it hasn't aged at all.
Yeah, I think Trave specifically, he's always
his games. But games do age. Games do age things. But with games, that's because everybody's always looking for the next innovative thing, like whether it's a graphical effect, an inertia effect, whatever. And then you'll come across the fact that the machine can't do it because it's just too slow.
Yeah.
And then it ages it. So
yeah. Aye. Anyway, folks, listen, we're going to wrap this up. So thank you for everyone that's taking time to join myself and Craig tonight. It's always been good fun. And lastly, thanks very much to you, Craig. It's always a pleasure having you on, mate.
Always.
I'll let you crack on with your blog. I will be back tomorrow night, 7 o'clock till 9 for some more retro gaming fun. So I will see you then. Until next time, folks. As always, enjoy your Saturday night. Thanks for watching.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.